All right, guys, just in case you get lost on the mountain.
There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive, and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Town studio right here in Clark Fork, Idaho. And you might notice in my voice, I'm still packing around this chest cold thing. It may surprise some of you to know that there are still just regular old colds out there, and I've got one. And so it's a weird one, too, because like I feel fine, but you could totally hear it in my voice, and I'm coughing a lot. So bear with me through that. I apologize, but hopefully we'll be back. I've been down on the vitamin C and D and everything else trying to get rid of this thing, but it's still lingering around. So a quick announcement before I get into this episode. I'm not totally sure what this conversation, how it exactly went, but it was brought up at some point that a cell cam, you know, a game camera that texts you in real time, the pictures that it's taken, can satisfy the, in particular, Idaho state law of checking your traps every 72 hours. You guys know I got a good buddy down in kind of south central Idaho that is a game warden, Steve Roberts, and he's been on the show. And I called him up this last weekend, and I asked him for some clarification on that. And it turns out that is a fairly common discussion point within the agency where they want to address that. And just so you guys know, in the state of Idaho, trappers, the cell camera does not satisfy the law to check every 72 hours. It does not satisfy that law. You've still got to physically go out and check your traps, and it makes sense because I know some of these. I've got a really good set of these cell cams, the Tacticam Reveals, and they do a really good job. But even as good as they are, they can still miss stuff. They can malfunction, and you just think nothing's going on, and maybe you're not even getting the check-in pictures or whatever the case is, or maybe, you know, let's say you got it on a wolf trap, and that wolf snags his leg on that trap and maybe kind of cuts out of the corner of the vision of the camera or whatever the case is. The point being, there's a million things that can happen, and I wasn't sure if this needed clarification or not, but I know I've talked to a lot of people who are under the impression that cell cam can satisfy the law for checking your traps, and it cannot. However, that said, getting you a couple of these cell cams, especially you guys know I'm a big fan of Tacticam and the Tacticam Reveal cameras. I've got them all over my property. I'm like addicted to these things. In fact, I got some elk showing up yesterday on one of my back cameras. So they are still very handy to have out there. Like if let's say you just checked your trap this morning, and an hour ago a wolf happened upon it and is stuck there. Instead of him being there for 2 or 3 days, you know immediately that you've got a wolf and you can go get him, or bobcat or mountain, whatever you're trapping. So anyways, just wanted to point that out there for clarification. I don't want ever to be held responsible for giving people wrong information in terms of laws and rules and regulations in terms of hunting and trapping. So hopefully that helps you guys and clarifies it. And again, guys, that is just for Idaho. I am not sure. I've not verified that one way or the other in any other state. So that is just for my Idaho peeps. So this week, we are going to be having a conversation kind of centered around search and rescue and getting, just being generally safe out in the backcountry. I've got a past guest on, Mr. Mike Kuper. Mike, did I say your last name right there, buddy?
Yes, you did.
Okay, just making sure. I always do that. I say somebody's name and then it like pops into my head. Oh no, did you pronounce that right? Because I hate it when I mispronounce somebody's name, unless it's Guy Duplanchier. Then I don't mind mispronouncing his name. So, Mike, you are with the Rifle, Colorado Police Department and the County Search and Rescue. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we had you on. You were on that adult onset hunting episode, right?
Yeah. Yep.
From like a year ago. Was that a year or was that 2 years?
No, it was just over a year, probably like 13 months or so.
Yeah, I think it was January of 2021, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a fun episode, man. And I know we talked about bringing you back on, and it took me a little longer than I thought, but I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
So you're in Rifle, Colorado, and give us a little history on your career real quick, where in terms of law enforcement, where you're at and how long you've been doing it and where you're at today.
Sure. So I've been in law enforcement for about 21 years. With the Rifle Police Department, primarily. I worked for a short time for the Eagle County Sheriff's Office before getting hired here in where I live. I worked through patrol. I was on a multi-jurisdictional SWAT team for several years.
Sweet.
And then, yeah, it was some great experience. And it kind of led me into search and rescue, because when I got promoted to a sergeant, I was kind of a field supervisor, and I just didn't have the time to dedicate to the tactical team and anymore. And it was, the physical conditioning requirements were I'm not a young man, and so it was really challenging for me, So I ended up leaving the team and just working through. I was several years as a patrol sergeant, a detective sergeant, and then just over here in last spring, I got promoted to lieutenant with the department. But after I'd left the SWAT team, we did a lot of training, a lot of. It was just a very. I really was attracted to that team environment, and when I left, it was something that I definitely missed, and I've been always an avid backpacker and spending a lot of time with a lot of rock climbing, things like that in the backcountry. So I kind of started looking around at our local search and rescue team and ended up joining that. And just up until this past year, I've got to think about 11 years on. In the past 4, I was the vice president of that team.
I'm always so intrigued with folks that choose careers in law enforcement. It's such a it's a unique thing. You guys are such a minority, and there's always like this higher sense of duty and higher sense of calling. Because let's face it, it's not something that's going to make you rich, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of respect that comes from that. And I know I've had a few folks in the past that are law enforcement, including you on the show. And I hope that I articulate that right, that I appreciate what you do. It's not an easy career choice. You guys can take a lot of flack. But, Mike, I do have a hot tip for you. This could be the Crime Stopper podcast right here.
All right.
Okay, because you're in Rifle, right?
Yes.
All right. So, there is a newcomer to Colorado, just up the road from you. His name is Guy Duplanchier. I mentioned him earlier, and he's nothing but trouble. And I've got if you put a bolo out, he's got a silver Dodge Ram, and if you see him, just assume he's speeding and give him a good old-fashioned Colorado welcome with a nice speeding ticket. We got a deal?
Yeah, I think I might have heard about this guy.
I guarantee he's probably wearing Birkenstocks, driving that truck. Probably still has California plates on that thing, and not to mention you don't drive a Dodge, do you?
Nope.
Okay, good, because he does, and that's trouble as it is. That's enough for a ticket. I think people that drive a Dodge truck should just get pulled over and get a ticket and get hassled anyway. But that's just my opinion. So. There you go, Guy. That's why I was asking what kind of truck you're driving. Mike, so I don't know if I told you this when you were on last time. So my grandpa's from Colorado. I think I did. He's from Rifle, Colorado.
Yeah, I think you did mention that.
can you give us an idea for listeners that have never been in that area, just so we can kind of get a visual on what kind of, backcountry surrounds that area and that region, the county that you're serving on the search and rescue teams? What is the terrain like? What does it look like there?
So it's really diverse. The city of Rifle is fairly central. We're the largest, according to this past census, the highest populated municipality in Garfield County. But we're most probably noted for Glenwood Springs. That's where the county seat is, and the Hot Springs Sunlight Mountain Ski Resort. All that stuff is about 30 miles to the east of Rifle. So overall, the county touches the Utah border at its westernmost boundary, and is pretty deep into the Rocky Mountains and towards the Continental Divide on its eastern boundary. And our terrain around Rifle, it's anywhere like where I live. It's kind of high desert.
Yeah.
But it rapidly into the Flat Tops Wilderness area, grand chunk of Grand Mesa, these big mesas, and I think probably up into the 12,000 foot range of elevation. So some pretty remote spots, and a lot of rugged terrain and a lot of diverse terrain.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on Google Earth here. It does, especially north of you there, looks pretty damn desolate out there. High mountain timber kind of stuff, and you got the Colorado River coming right through, right?
Yep. That runs.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, east to west, runs right through the middle of my little slice of heaven here in Rifle.
Yeah, guys over in Newcastle. I don't know if that's your jurisdiction, but just another hot tip for you. But so you're not very far from the Utah border. Oh no, you dropped down. Let's see.
I would say we're probably hour and a half ish. Grand Junction is to the west. That's in a Mesa County, but that's about an hour away, and then I would say about another 20 to 30 minutes to the Utah border.
Gotcha. I hunted an area once in Utah, in that Bitter Creek area, that I remember the dude I was with, I didn't know this at the time, but the dude I was with told me that we were right on the Colorado line there. So anyway, and the reason for that is, this isn't like, because I think Colorado is like two places. You've got the Colorado Rocky Mountain region, and then you've got the prairie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
And so I just wanted to clarify that aspect of it, because a lot of people that listen to this show and kind of what we're going to be centered around or in this discussion is going to be, hunters that go into these mountainous regions and potentially they're going to get injured, or they're going to get lost, or things of that nature, and how they can avoid or protect themselves in the event, things like that. When we go back to talking kind of about your background, what was it? You'd mentioned, you're a hiker, you've been a backpacker, a rock climber. You've been hunting for a few years now. What was a draw to search and rescue in particular? Was there something was it the team that you missed from being on the SWAT team kind of thing, or?
Yeah, that was, I think, in looking back at it, that was really a primary drive for me to get on, as well as meeting, you meet a lot of, you kind of gravitate. It's like people that shoot archery league, right? You kind of gravitate to want to hang around with people that have some similar interests. So
sure.
So at the time when I got on our search and rescue team, I really wasn't hunting. I'd kind of hadn't hunted a bunch. I hunted when I was a kid, but then I had like a very long lapse. You work for places when you're the low man on the totem pole. Keep in mind where I live and have always lived is lots of people hunt. So when you're the low man on the totem pole, you can just forget about getting any time off during hunting. So it kind of paints you into it, So I didn't hunt for a long time, but I got involved with the team here and met people that were wanted to go rock climbing. I got into ice climbing, just a handful of those types of activities. But I found myself with our peak rescue season was hunting season. That's when we were the busiest. So when I started hunting, I had I'm a avid, I love podcasts, and I'm a big fan of I'd mentioned it on our last one of the Kafaru cast, I learned the woodsmanship, and I listen to what those guys are doing. I'm like, that's just that message definitely needs to get out there. Just having some knowledge, like the smarter you are, the less you have to carry, sort of a sort of thing. And then just having some, but I was just seeing like mistakes people were making, maybe some errors in judgment, and some things that are just plain unavoidable that you just have to, that you need to have like some contingency plans for. So, and then here just a handful of years ago, I picked up a bow and just really got bit by the bow hunting bug, and been doing that ever since.
How'd your season go this last year?
Well, I didn't get anything on the ground, but it was kind of strange. I had a change in leadership at work. My former chief of police was moved into the city manager's position, so I was serving as the interim chief. So I couldn't take my normal 2 weeks off in September. I was able to do it, but I split up. So I took the first week off, and I've never been I know a lot of people are about opening day, and it might be good. I think it's area specific, because I've not had really any luck here. And so I ended up having to go out on opening day, and it was just really bad. Rained and just tough weather. I didn't get into anything. And then I worked the next 2 weeks, and the last week I went out. The weather was good. There was no one out in where I was hunting. It was all to myself, and I was able to call in a nice bull. I got him to about 50 yards, but I just couldn't get him to stop where his vitals were clear, where I could slide an arrow through. So I didn't spook.
That's frustrating.
Oh, it was, and it's the first time I'd called in a spike before, but this was the first time I actually got a mature bull that came in, and he came in he had 2 cows, but I didn't get busted. They saw me, but I just froze, and they went back to feeding, and I just waited, and he ended up just feeding off. And I thought rather than push it and chase him away, I could come back and try to, that evening or the next day, and try to get him back where I had a little bit better shooting lanes. But when I went back, I called and looked around and could never turn him up again. So, but it seems like every year I get a little bit closer. So
yeah, that's the progression, man. No, that's fantastic. There's nothing more frustrating when you're so close but so far away, and sometimes when it's so far away, what that means is it's like a less than a pencil shape or size diameter, limb, or just something stupid like that. And it's super frustrating, but I guess that's why they call it hunting.
Yeah, it was interesting. The only time he stopped was like straight head on, and it's like, man, that's way too far for me to try a frontal shot.
Yeah.
So I let him just keep moving around, and thinking I'd get a broadside, or he'd get a little closer, but it just never happened. I think I'm kind of proud of myself for not trying to push a bad position, and I just figured that, I think I've heard him bugle. He's got a very, very distinctive bugle, so I've heard him bugle in that area before, even last season. I heard him because he just mostly chuckles with just a little bugle at the start. Really distinctive. So I thought, he'll still be here. And then, my neighbor's the game warden, and he's probably just sick of me because I was pestering, hey, didn't anybody get that bull up for the next 2 months? I was texting him every day. Did anybody check that bull in when up in that area? And so we'll see. Hopefully I get another crack at him next year.
So your gut feeling and based on what the neighbor says, it sounds like that bull made it, huh?
Yeah, for the second year in a row. It's kind of a little sanctuary spot where they get a lot of pressure from several different directions, but pushes in that far, as far as I've been going in. 'Cause, I'm a backpack hunter, so nobody just pushes into that particular spot. So
those kind of areas, when you find them, you've got to latch onto them. I have an area just like what you're describing, and in fact, the audience has heard me drone on about this bull that I almost shot this last year when my bow got caught up in my my camera. And that spot, and I don't know if I've talked about it much or not, is exactly what you're saying. Everybody, there's a lot of pressure around this area, but for some reason, this particular little mountain, it's kind of more of a hill than a mountain, in my opinion, but it gets missed by hunters. And I actually found it because I was whitetail hunting and came across a bunch of elk one time. So anyway, there is a bull up there that I have been messing with for this will be the third year, and I know he's still alive. And it's one of those. And what I'm trying to say is, for people listening, you want to try to find these kind of little sanctuary spots that Mike's talking about. For example, the spot I'm talking about is kind of in between two big mountain ranges. Well, I don't know if that's the right way to explain it. It's in between two areas where people put a lot of pressure in, and they drive by it. Mike, you're talking about you're more of a backcountry kind of guy, because I think Colorado lends itself to that a lot better than like northern panhandle Idaho does. But in my case, everybody drives by this spot, and doesn't think anything about it. And so anyway, great spots. Those are great areas that when you find a bull in those areas, you're going to find them there like every year. So yeah, he'll be there next year, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to hear how that plays out, because I feel like a third time's going to be a charm for you.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty excited for September to roll around. Yeah,
me too. I was just looking at pictures from this last year. I took my daughters out a bunch last year and got some really good pictures of just hanging out with them and tagging along, and what a difference. So I'm really looking forward to it. Now, you guys don't have a spring bear hunt, do you?
No, man, I was still a teenager when we lost our spring bear, which is super, super unfortunate. And I'm actually going up to BC here in May and doing a bear hunt up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you gonna do that as a bow hunt?
Yep.
Nice, man. Can they bait up there? I don't know if
they do. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going up with Primitive, and they do all spot and stock. So,
man, you and my buddy Nate would be like pretty good friends. He's all about the trad bow stuff, man. He killed a huge bear last year. And obviously, Mike, if you ever want to just come up to North Idaho and hunt bear, just hit me up. We got bunches of them, man. I'm excited for this year. I'll have like 3 barrel sets. So, yeah, gonna be good. You can do spring turkey though, right?
Yep. I'm gearing up. I was actually setting up some arrows last night for turkey season. So, nice. And I really enjoy that too. It's because I can hunt very, very close to where I live, so I can day hunt. I can get out early in the morning, and I mean, it's just I don't have to go very far. We got grip of wild turkeys. That program has done quite well around here, at least.
I feel like it's done well everywhere. We've got more turkeys than we know what to do with.
Yeah. They're fun. Hunt. A lot of guys don't care much for it, but man, I enjoy it.
I feel like the people that don't put a lot of stock into it haven't done it seriously or something, or maybe they have and it's just not their thing, which is totally fine. But man, turkey hunting's a ball. I love getting those things just fired up, and they come in like crazy. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, ours doesn't open until April 15th. I feel like it sucks because about mid-March rolls around and I start seeing the rest of the country. Everybody's posting pictures of their turkey hunts, and we're sitting up here in Idaho, and it doesn't open until the 15th of April. I feel like we're the last ones in the country to have it open up. What does it open for you guys?
Yeah, we're not far off. I believe it's around the 9th or something of April.
Okay.
But it's about the same. But truly here, at least this year, it's been cold. And there's a decent amount of snow on the ground, so a lot of the birds are pushed down low onto private. So I think holding out for that next month is just going to make it better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good luck with all those hunts, man. I'm really excited to see how that one in up in BC goes in May. That'll be way cool. You'll email me pics, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about when it comes to search and rescue. Can you just briefly explain the function, as obvious as that may sound? Explain the function of a search and rescue and how it is operated from a volunteer standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So and again, what I can speak to is specific to Colorado. Most other states are very, very similar and very close in how they're structured, but there might be some nuanced differences there. But in Colorado, they're a function of the sheriff's office. So while that's the sheriff's office oversees it, they're the ones that get dispatched when a search and rescue call comes in. To try to staff up a search and rescue team would be extremely difficult for a sheriff's to do with all the other responsibilities that they wind up doing. So they, by and large, will have a volunteer component with a liaison to the sheriff's office. Part of the attachment to the sheriff's office comes from, so when you buy a hunting license in Colorado, for example, there's a 25-cent SAR tax, a fee that goes on there. That goes to search and rescue teams, but it doesn't go to the one in the county where you're like I buy a tag here, that 25 cents isn't earmarked for Garfield County. It goes into a larger state-run pot of money that's administered by the Department of Local Affairs, and then through the sheriff's office, we put in for a portion of that those funds each year for either equipment or training. So, so we work really closely with the sheriff's office on that. But the team members themselves are at least in my team and most of the ones in Colorado, they're all volunteer. All of our personal gear that we buy, by and large, the team will maybe furnish a jacket, things like that. But the majority of your personal gear, you purchase yourself, and you work on an on-call, effectively an on-call basis. So when either an in-reach or spot call goes into a dispatch center, or a family member calls our countywide dispatch and reports a missing person, it gets aired to the sheriff's department. And effectively, the way a call out would work is they'll maybe do a little bit of preliminary investigation. If a trailhead's kind of close, they might go see if the vehicle's there, that kind of thing. And then when they kind of, pretty quickly they'll determine whether this is a legit search and rescue mission, then they page out, the volunteers to go ahead and respond.
When somebody wants to volunteer for a search and rescue a team, in their own county, because that is super similar as to how it is up here in North Idaho, at least. What kind of qualifications or prerequisites is a search and rescue team? Gosh, I'm really fumbling over my words tonight. What kind of prerequisites or qualifications are necessary or sought after?
It's, as far as necessary, there really isn't a lot. I think for our team, you have to be over 18. And that sort of thing. But there are some things that are sought after. A lot of that, at least here, is the ability to with your schedule to be able to respond to missions and training. But effectively, we bring people in with very, very little. They might have some experience in off-roading, four-wheeling, or they might have horses, something like that. But we run every 2 years it's called the SAR Technician Academy. So we go ahead and do that all in-house and train people up, and then we train 3 Thursdays of the month. There's some sort of training going on one Saturday, so effectively 4 times a month.
Oh, wow.
We have training. So you can really, if you have a person that is really interested in having a dog, they can join the team, and once they're on the team, they can start really working with the canine handlers and working their dog into into that group. Or if you're a rafter, we do a lot. We like you said, we have the Colorado River and a chunk of the Roaring Fork in our county, so we do a lot of a good handful of river missions. So we do swiftwater rescue training. We have a jet drive Zodiac and a handful of rafts. So we do quite a bit of swiftwater stuff. So you can find something. If in my case it was rock climbing and just backcountry searches. So that's sort of the arena that I really kind of focused my attention on with the team.
I guess that was one of my questions. What does the training look like? But so these volunteers, they attend 3 to 4 trainings a month. Is that what you're saying? On a Saturday?
Well, so there's the way our team is set up. We do 1 Saturday a month, and then 3 Thursdays. And
Thursdays. That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they don't have to attend all of those. For us, for example, the technical rescue aspect, as far as high angle and steep angle rope work, that's a very specialized and perishable skills. So we train that twice a month, just to keep those skills very sharp, because they're high risk, high consequence instances. Sure. And then we'll do 1 Thursday night training, which is general. Sometimes it will be medical, or we'll do some land navigation stuff. And typically we'll try to follow that up with a Saturday in-service training that will build on that. So if we do, let's say we do navigation, so we'll do a map reading classroom session on a Thursday evening. Get everybody dialed in with that, and then that following Saturday we might go do a compass course somewhere, or go do something out in the field. So
God, I would love that. I would love to. I haven't had a refresher with a compass or just actual good old fashioned map reading since I was in the military. So, that would be super interesting to me. Do you have? Can you share some story that I think maybe could relate to hunters in terms of something you've been called out on? Because I was reading an article a little bit earlier, and it sounds like it's pretty consistently across the West. In 2021, activating search and rescue crews throughout the West was up. It was on the rise. For example, one county kind of here in Idaho had 37 calls in 2021, which is up from 29 last year. And that doesn't seem like that big of a jump, but that's actually pretty substantial. There was another one, like Teton County Search and Rescue in Wyoming had more than 100 calls in 2021 compared to 80 the year before. And I think what's happening is, and as you read further, it suggests that yes, the population is growing and more people are going into the backcountry, but it's not proportionate to the growth in calls for search and rescue. So I'm curious if well, before I go down that rabbit hole, I wanted to get back and ask you that question. Like, what can you give us some real world examples as to some of the calls you've been called out on with the search and rescue team?
Yeah, and I have a theory about that other topic.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. We'll circle back to that, but I always tend to do that where I ask one question and then I totally throw us in a different direction.
No worries. Yeah, my first mission that I fielded on with the team was an archery hunter and his wife that had gotten separated, and she had spent at least one full night, and I think maybe 2, out in just a driving rainstorm, just a driving September rain, and he was unable to find where they had been together, and he had left her, and he couldn't find her again.
Oh, wow.
And the reliance on a cell phone, that's another one of my pet peeves, is like relying on technology. I think it's great, but I never want to have to rely on it. And he had a cell phone, but there's no cell service. He finally was able to, I think he actually ran into another hunting party that called for him. And we ended up finding her and getting her life flighted out through she wasn't injured. She was just exposure and had been out for quite some time. And I don't know if she would have made it another night, to be honest. But it was a big mission, and we had some mutual aid. We had a couple other, I think we had another team up here with us, just because it was, it was on the flat tops, and that's a massive chunk of real estate to work your way through.
Man, yeah, I'll bet.
So, and then more recently, we had a couple that were hunting in some really steep canyon country, elk hunting and rifle season, and they took a kind of a close to a last hunting like shot, dropped an elk down in this canyon bottom. And when they were hiking down in there, it was these terraced little cliff bands that you kind of had to work your way through. And at one point, it was a husband and wife. The husband kind of skipped off one of those terraces, and it wasn't a huge distance, but kind of just landed hard and blew the tendons, I believe, in both knees. But there was no getting.
Man, that hurts just hearing that.
Yeah, so he and his wife are down in this canyon bottom, and when I started on the team, air assets in our county were very, very, very hard to get. But in recent years, we've got 2 air ambulances based out of our area that donate time to fly and search, as well as having the Army Air National Guard's high altitude training site in Gypsum, which is not that far away. Very, very talented and competent pilots out of there. So one of the air ambulances flew, and we had a GPS location. I don't know if they sent that via an inReach or Spot or something, but when they were flying over that area, they quickly realized that there was no place to land. I mean, it's steep, dog hair thick timber country, and there was just no place to land. So our team went in, found them, and we couldn't pack them out either, because they were literally in the bottom, and by this point it was dark. So our several of our team members spent the night. The wife hiked out, and we got her back to her family. And then the next day they ended up calling the Army in, the National Guard, and they brought in a Black Hawk and did a hoist. Were able to hoist the patient out of the forest and fly him to a hospital.
Wow. So Mike, this might sound like an insensitive question, but it makes, I think, a lot of people wonder about this, and maybe it's a dumb question, but people like to listen to my podcast because I'm not afraid to ask dumb questions, because I'm not very smart. So when in that circumstance, Mike, when somebody they have to call in a helicopter from the National Guard, who pays for that? Is the injured party responsible for whatever it costs to fly a Black Hawk helicopter in to rescue you, or?
So as far as the National Guard goes, we have to go through a process to get that helicopter. Like a lot of guys think, well, hey, this is the injury. I'm competent in the backcountry. I know this is the injury, and I'm calling a helicopter. Well, that isn't going to work, because if you call it, if you call it and you get one, you're going to be paying for it. When we call, for example, it's a couple different processes, but specifically to requesting the Air National Guard, because they're a state resource. And part of their mission statement is to assist with search and rescues in the state of Colorado. We just go through it's a very quick approval process. It's funny that it actually goes through Florida. The commands.
Oh, really?
But it's very quick. They ask us some specific questions. What kind of risk do we have? What kind of risk to rescuers? That's something a lot of people don't consider. But not only risk to the patients, but what's our, if we were to try to get this person out, what's the risk to the rescuers going to look like? And they weigh that against the risk, because there is nothing safe about a helicopter. So they kind of, we run through that process. Like I said, it's very fast, and they'll approve the mission and get one in the air. But it's certainly not an easy button by any stretch, because
sure.
We do go through that process. It's the same thing with our air medical. Now the way their funding works, they donate some time to search and rescue, and by and large that time is spent either flying rescuers from point to point, or just locating the victim. But if they do transport that victim to a hospital, they're going to hit the insurance company for the helicopter ride. It's no different than an ambulance picking you up at the scene of a car accident or of falling on a ski mountain, it's no different. That ambulance isn't doing that for free, and they generally they'll hit your insurance company up.
What about somebody? Okay, the same scenario. Guy falls, but hurts his knees or whatever. Can't walk out of there. But you can get them out without a helicopter, and you just need the assistance of the search and rescue teams. Is that a big bill for them, or is that covered by insurance, or where does the funding come from for that? The 25 cents you were talking about, or?
Yeah, essentially that a lot of teams. There are some teams that do charge. I believe Grand County, Utah. I've done some training over there. And at least at that time, but that's Moab. Can you only imagine the amount of calls? There's people leaving work on a very regular basis to go pull people out of the backcountry. But as far as Colorado, I don't think there's any teams here that charge. It's all volunteer. Our equipment and fuel and all that stuff is either paid by the volunteers themselves or through reimbursement programs through their county. Lots of donations keep teams afloat, with that stuff. So when there's a lot of discussion that I've been present for, where they talk about charging, and one of the kind of common denominators is once you start charging, you'll get people hiding from rescuers. Because there's a bill, and once they hear the rescuers, they'll just try to follow them back out and work their way out on their own without being picked up. And nobody wants that, because you imagine the resources. Like I said, it gets crazy with the amount of people we push out there. We'd rather just find somebody. So
yeah. It's funny you say that, because that was one of my thoughts was, if I was injured, man, I'd like hide from the helicopter. Then if I had to end up paying for it, because they're going to take you to the hospital. But it's a
so
dumb.
We try to eliminate all those fears, and there's different companies have different. You can buy insurance plans. Spot, I don't know if it still is a thing, but just the Spot. I don't have an InReach. I have one of the older. I have a Spot device, but they used to have a thing where you could pay a little bit extra, and it was like an insurance for a helicopter to help you out with it if you needed a helicopter evacuation and stuff. And I don't have any real experience with those, but I have seen that. I know they're a thing. So
yeah. Let's take a quick break to give our show sponsors some well-deserved love. Let's start with Scree Extreme Mountain Gear. High-performance hunting attire and gear. Scientifically tested camo patterns. Complete layering systems. And in my opinion, the finest merino wool products to keep you warm, dry, and comfortable. It's all backed by a great company. Some of my personal favorites in the Scree lineup are the hard scrabble pants for early to mid-season, and then as it gets colder, I switch to the Kodiak pants for late season. The Bridger glassing mitts are like game changers, and I love the Nebo rain gear. Scree offers great packages on the website as bundles, like the elk bundle, that will completely outfit you for your favorite hunt. Oh, and my favorite part? You won't need to refinance your house to get outfitted. Try the starter bundle for less than $500. It's an insane deal. With the VIP sizing guarantee, you can exchange something that doesn't fit for free. I just had to do this for something that I got my wife. It was a little big, so I just sent it back. They covered the shipping both ways and exchanged it for the right size. So go to screegear.com and at checkout, use promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. Phelps Game Calls, one thing that I love about companies that are born out of hunting is their story. Like Phelps Game Calls, the American success story that walks us through how something started small and grew into something big. Like Phelps, he started this company kind of as a hobby in his garage in 2009. Now, a little over a decade later, Phelps is one of the premier hunting call companies on the planet for good reason. They're the most realistic calls on the market, and that is saying something. Check out the AMP lineup. For predator calls like the 3-pack POR 123 or the Fawn in Distress, check those out. Turkey calls, get a diaphragm, a pot call, or a box call, and a complete line of waterfowl calls. Hit up the website and at checkout, use promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off. Phelps Game Calls, get them close. The Elk Collective. The best investment for hunting success is what's between your ears. Having elk hunting knowledge is what separates those who succeed every once in a while against those who notch tags every year. There's a very fine line there, and there's a perfect amount of time. If you're listening to this now,
to get through the entire course before September. Improve your chances with a virtual course of over 140 videos that cover things like how to get elk tags throughout the West, scouting and e-scouting, beginner to advanced elk calling, gear, fitness, nutrition, shooting processes, hunting scenarios, strategies, and tons more. They've got some very big names on this platform that give you their personal expertise as you go through the course. It's the best way to make you the best elk hunter as you get into the woods. So go to theelkcollective.com and use promo code The Western Huntsman for $20 off. It's normally $89, so when you use my promo code, it's going to be the best $69 you've spent on elk hunting, and I guarantee you it's worth every penny. Check it out, guys. Hoffman Boots. Let me give you guys a piece of advice from a dude with many miles on his feet. Never skimp on quality hunting boots. Hoffman Boots is a fourth-generation, family-owned company based in North Idaho. I've been sporting a pair of Hoffmans for close to a decade. Particularly, I like the Hoffman Explorer in the 8-inch. In my most humble opinion, again, Hoffman offers the most comfortable hunting boot that does the least amount of damage to my feet after several miles on the mountain. Very little break-in period on these boots, by the way. I took them right out of the box and went on a crazy elk hunt, not even a blister. For hunting, they have the Explorers and the Summit boot offered in insulated and non-insulated. And ladies, check out the new women's Hoffman Explorer 400. They also carry lineman boots, winter pack boots, logging boots, and hiking boots. Get totally outfitted at hoffmanboots.com, and at checkout, as you know it's coming, use promo code, all caps lock, Huntsman10 for 10% off. Last but not least, Tacticam. If you're interested in self-filming your hunts, whether for memories or making hunting content, check out the Tacticam products like the Spotter LR, Tacticam 5.0, and the Film Through Scope system, all of which are available at thewesternhuntsman.com, which helps support our fight against the anti-hunting movement. But my favorite is the Tacticam Reveal cell cams. I use these cell cams all over my property, and I'm like obsessed with monitoring the wildlife in real time with these cameras. They not only text me instantly when a buck or a bear is cruising through, my reveals make for excellent security systems. I know when the FedEx dude is delivering packages way down at the bottom of our driveway. And I also know if some knucklehead shows up to try to steal them. I know when someone's trespassing or if I have the kind of wildlife roaming around that I don't want, like a coyote. And I quickly react with my cat-like reflexes. Great for trappers, great for hunters, security, anything, guys. Check it out at tacticam.com because I don't have the reveals on my website right now. Let them know I sent you. Tacticam.com. Let's get back to the show. Here we go.
Well, let's circle back to because just I guess to summarize on that, I don't want anybody to worry about that either. I think it's just important to get people out and worry about that part later. And so, but it is interesting to think about, and the best thing, guys, listening, is to try to do what you can to prevent that from happening, because I imagine a Black Hawk helicopter is a few $100 an hour or more to operate, plus all the fees and everything, gas, and with these gas prices, hell, I'd just die. I'd just leave myself in the forest.
House.
But let's get back to what that article was saying, where it seems like consistently across the West, the amount of calls for search and rescue teams being called out has gone up in the last couple of years. One of my suspicions is with COVID, I feel like a lot more people are going into the woods. I don't feel like that. I know they are. I've seen it, and that's at least the case up here, and I imagine it's like that everywhere. But you said you had a philosophy about that you wanted to talk about, and let's go there.
I think you definitely hit on it. I think a lot of that increase, it certainly cannot just be coincidence that it's tied to the time when COVID rolled out and the big Disneyland stuff like that people were doing was just not attainable anymore. Here in Colorado we have Rocky Mountain National Park. Well, Rocky Mountain National Park, it's been one of those parks you never needed a reservation system. You could just go there. And they now have a reservation system in place that started just last year. So, I'm totally think that's the case. And those people that are going into the increase in people that are going into the backcountry, just through sheer numbers, are going to bump up your search and rescue calls. But there are also people that probably haven't been doing it before. Like, this is a new group that's going in there, and they likely don't have or have not spent the time in preparing for it or understanding the consequences. I see the ridiculous things people do in Rocky Mountain National Park with elk. I mean, trying to get right up on bull elk in the rut and get photos and stuff, and it's just amazing that people aren't getting killed.
I know. What have you seen that video where the dude is trying to get super close? The bull elk turns around and comes at him, and he has to jump over that little fence to get in the corral thing. And
yes.
Yeah, isn't that Rocky Mountain National Park?
It's a town. I think it's a town near Estes Park, which is kind of on the gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park on the Front Range over by Boulder.
It just blows my mind that people do that, and it's the same in Yellowstone.
Yep.
You know, these geeks get out and act like they're gonna pet a bison.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, right. I mean, what the hell's wrong with people? It just blows my mind. It's like natural selection or something taking place.
Right, but that's what I think. I think that's part of it. I think it's the people that are getting out that are just, they haven't been around it. They don't have a whole lot of common sense in dealing with the potential consequences of just doing stuff that, I mean, it's Colorado. Good luck predicting the weather. Good luck, with that. And so don't bring rain gear for a full day's outing. Well, it might rain, and it's likely that it's going to rain. So, so I think that's part of it. They're not really prepared, and they don't, to some degree, they probably just don't know what they don't know. If they've not been raised in that. I mean, I grew up here. I grew up in a small town in the middle of Colorado, so if you want to make me uncomfortable, you pick me up by the scruff of the neck and drop me off in downtown Dallas, in a city. I am not going to be in my element there. So
I get flat out nervous. I have to go to Seattle every once in a while for work, and it's like I get nervous driving. Like the freeways have 5 freaking lanes. How do people navigate that? It's insane. Right. I want to touch on something you said. You've kind of brought it up twice, and I think it's something that based on what you're talking about, let's help some of these people that may not know. Rain. When we're talking about rain, you'd mentioned that one rescue where the hunter's wife had gotten she had gotten lost or he couldn't find where he had left her, whatever, and she was out for 2 nights. I think a lot of people are going to hear that and think, well, what's the big deal? It was just rain in September. It's not like it's, 20 degrees outside kind of thing. But it is September in the high country. And so September at 8, 10, 12,000 feet elevation in Colorado is a lot different than September at 500 feet in California or Oregon or something like that, right?
Yeah, totally. This isn't a lovely smelling, spring shower at an 80 degree temps.
And can we talk about the impacts of a driving rain and what that does to the body? If you have something to offer on that, because I kind of do, but I want to hear somebody who actually knows what they're talking about if they have a take on it.
Yeah, if you can't get dry, and she didn't do it, didn't have a shelter.
Did she have rain gear?
She did have rain gear. Truly, in my opinion, that's the only reason why we found her alive. I don't think she would have survived if she would have just been in just a however many layers, but didn't have any kind of rain gear, because it was, I want to say it was probably around 10,000 feet, and I'm not kidding. It just drove rain, and I mean, it may not be getting below freezing at night, but it's going to be in the high 30s up there, low 40s. And that will, I mean, mentally and everything, it is hard to get your head wrapped around how debilitating that can be on your body.
That, what you just said, the mentality of it. the mental effects. Picture if you will, folks, listen, like you're on a mountain, you're 10,000 feet elevation, which, like Mike was saying, in September you're going to get close to freezing temperatures. And then when you're saturated in a driving rain that is just relentless and there's no relief from it, and you feel like you're just wet down to the bone, and there might be a slight breeze, I guarantee you're cold. And I think that takes a toll, especially for somebody who has been separated from their party or their hunting partner, and they're out there alone. They're in a place they're not familiar with. It's dark. There's wild things everywhere. It's pounding rain. There's probably wind, and they feel they have this feeling of hopelessness that comes over them that is just compounded by the constant saturation of the rain. And I think that people maybe not. They don't give enough credit to the mental havoc that could wreak on a person when you're in that kind of scenario. What do you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the hopelessness. You get a storm coming in. Even during the day, if you had some visual references, if you had maybe done some terrain association or something, and you're like, okay, I know I need to head towards this mountain range or this direction. Well, when it's socked in and raining, you're not going to be able to see anything.
Yeah. There's no moonlight, no stars. Right.
And furthermore, after that first night of being rained on and wet all night, you're not moving the next day.
Yeah.
Like that, I think you're going to be at the point of to a large degree defeated, at least in this case. There's a point, there's a window. You have a window when your wits are about you, when things start to go bad, where critical decisions need to be made. And if you exceed that, if you do nothing and you get beyond that, well, now you're not operating on point. You're not operating at the same level you were previously. And so therefore the decisions you make just may not be, are largely, it's going to be luck. You're going to have to then now be relying on luck rather than some sort of skill or your training or whatever. And and you exceed that window, and that window gets real small when you get cold and wet. You don't have, if it's not raining and you have to spend a night out, even in Colorado up high without shelter, you'll be fine. And when it warms up the next day, maybe the middle of the night, you're going to be shivering pretty bad and on the threshold of hypothermia. But once it warms up, or the sun comes up, there's hope. Well, that doesn't exist when you sit through, 20 some odd hours of rain. Mm-hmm. It just becomes not when this stops, it becomes, this is never going to stop.
Yeah. And that's the hopelessness that you're talking about, that feeling that the rain is never going away and there's no getting out of this scenario. Do you have advice or like a recommendation for people to kind of help build up that mental stamina? Were they in that event? I think we do need to get into talking about what kind of essential gear people are carrying and all that kind of stuff. But on top of that, is there advice you could offer to help build that mental stamina so that you maybe it takes longer to get to that point of hopelessness in somebody's mind? That because I think that's how people die. I think that's what happens is the mental hopelessness takes over and they just kind of give up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And it's interesting. I've kind of got a little bit fascinated in a little bit of a fascination with like just mental strength and how do you improve it? I've listened to, you look at Cam Hanes and some of these guys that are just, they do things that are, so difficult.
Yeah.
I think, and I truly think and this is just my opinion. And, again, it's stuff that I've read and watched on, from other people. But, the term that really struck home with me is it doesn't happen during the crisis. It's going to happen. You need to develop that. It's honing the blade, and you need to be honing that blade all season long. And the term that I've heard is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. you have to, if you go camping and just bring a bivy sack when the weather's good in some sort of a controlled environment, but you don't have to, it's not an all or nothing. You can really sort of wean yourself into that. If there's a lot of people that totally get, like and I know you do as well. I backpack and I do it alone. I go out and there's some people that are like, I don't know how you can be so comfortable in your own head for that amount of time out there just by yourself. Well, I didn't come out of the womb that way. But part of it was bred out of necessity. But you can just go car camping for a night, and hey, if it's too much for you to handle, you can get back in the car and leave.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be getting dropped off or way out in the middle of nowhere. And okay,
it doesn't have to be an episode of reality TV where, like you're saying, dropped off in the middle of nowhere with nothing on your back. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, and you can accomplish so much. You can test gear. You can see, hey, man, that type of mountain house does not work for me. It's all
no mountain house works for me.
Right. So the abilities, the things you can gain from doing that, from taking some of that time in off season, in addition to the physical fitness, being physically fit and kind of just testing yourself in increments, it will build that strength so that when you are in that situation and you get separated and you're wet, before you get into crisis mode, you can start coming up with a plan, knowing what's going to happen. No, I know that as time progresses and I'm unable to get dry, I'm only going to make worse decisions. So while I'm still with it, to build some success into myself, I need to either try to get into a tree well, get someplace where I can I may not be able to get dry, but I can keep getting wetter. So, and just try to set myself up to minimize things. So
Mike, I love how you explain that. And I've never heard it put that way. And I've never really thought about it that way, but you're exactly right. Backing up to what you were saying, for somebody who has never done it before, starting out with like a car camp trip. Car camp trips are a little trickier than people think they are. And I recommend doing it while you're young, because sleeping in your truck when you're my age makes for a sore next day. And, but it didn't used to. It didn't used to. But I love that concept where to kind of build, get comfortable being uncomfortable. As somebody who's never camped before, going out into the national forest somewhere and finding a flat spot to park their car and maybe camp there or pitch a tent is going to be, I believe, substantially more difficult than they give it credit for prior to them doing it. And then use it as a stepping stone. So, okay, we're car camping, and then the next step is maybe go on a one-night backcountry trip, or whatever the case is, and maybe do it with friends the first time, and then this next time do it alone, and then the next time go further and go maybe for 2 nights, kind of thing. So, now I like that concept. I think a lot of people could benefit from that.
I've done it even recently, and I wouldn't say I'm a master in the backcountry by any stretch, but it had been. I kind of recently I've been experimenting. I went to a floorless shelter, and but I hadn't had it out in the snow. Mm-hmm. So, well, believe me, the first time I did that, I wasn't going to strap on my skis and head out and go for it. Sure. I drove up and I pitched it and kind of got a feel for how I would set it up, and just camped not very far at all from my vehicle, but was able to kind of get a feel for, okay, how is it to stake this thing out in snow? Like, that's not something I've done before.
Did you say you staked a tent?
Yeah, just a floorless. I have a Seek Outside floorless shelter, and I use it in the summer. Uh-huh. I use it for everything, but I know I wanted to see what it was all about to do in the winter, and I learned quite a bit from it. But staking them out when you end up having to tie it to what trees are around, and tying rocks to the guy lines and burying them in the snow because you can't get to the ground. And then my ground oddly enough, because I'm cheap, my ground cloth is a piece of Tyvek roofing material.
Oh, that stuff is great, man.
Yeah, but on snow it is slick. It is so as I
Yes.
lay there and warmed the snow up underneath, and then it froze. I kind of melted it, and then it refroze. It moved a lot. I would find myself and my pad, and ground cloth had parted company several times through the course of the night, because it would just slide around. So just a few. It's like, that you wouldn't know. But again, when I decided to go do that, I wasn't going to go ski, 3, 4, 5 miles into the backcountry and then take a crack at it. I thought I'm just going to do this close first to see how it goes. And if it's, falls apart on me, I can get back in my car and go home.
Yeah. Yeah. Good thinking. I like it. It's training. I love it.
Yeah.
Huh. What do you see in your experience, Mike? What are some of the biggest mistakes and this doesn't need to pertain to hunting itself, but anybody backpacking in overnight, that are causing, I guess, concern for you or raise an eyebrow? Like when you hear somebody saying, "Hey, I'm going into the backcountry, and this is what I'm taking, this is what I'm doing, blah blah blah." What are some mistakes people make that kind of get them into trouble?
Largely, it's the preparation, and like it gives the impression that they don't really have a plan. They're not taking it very serious, and they really don't have a plan for things going wrong. Mm-hmm. I've climbed a good handful of 14,000 foot peaks here in the state, and it is well known that you don't want to be on a summit, at noon, anywhere around noon. You don't want to be up there anywhere close to noon or later, because of we get in the summer, we get afternoon electrical storms and thunderstorms and rain.
Yeah.
We'll start out, at early in the morning, and we want to be, off the summit and hiking out by, 11ish. And I still, as I've hiked out, and I see these people with, a Nalgene of water, shorts and sneakers on their way up. And I'm like, man, it's amazing we're not called out constantly. I see that I am floored that we are not called out constantly. So I think it's just they just don't look at it's very short-sighted. They see, I'm going to hit the summit, I'm going to get off, but they didn't pay attention to the weather. They either don't believe it's a thing, or they don't believe it's risky. I've had my ice axes humming in my hand from electricity being very, very close, and that is a horrible feeling.
Yeah. So, there's nothing worse than that. I was knocked to the ground by lightning at one point when I was standing on the bank of a lake once. And it's like what you said. These storms in the mountains can come out of nowhere. They won't show up on your little weather app on your phone. They won't, you won't know about them. They just all of a sudden form. They come in fast, they come in hard, and they come in strong, and all of a sudden they're gone. And the lightning can be pretty intense.
Yeah, completely. And and I'm not saying that you have to, if you're going on a 4 or 5 hour, you're going to go peak bag, and that you need to be fully rucked out, and but hey, throw if you're going to hike in shorts, throw a raincoat in there and wear good footwear. Just maybe bring a first aid kit. Like, just have a plan for if you get held up, if something happens. But it's like they're on the, it's like the ultralight, everybody's ultralight until something bad happens, and then they're like, man, I wish I had,
I know.
So but they just don't have that mindset of preparing for something, preparing for blowing an ankle out, or whatever the case may be. There's just not much prep in there. So predicting the weather, like, you cannot, in Colorado at least, you can't predict it. You might get lucky, but the only thing you can predict is it's going to change. And the in the summer, the rainstorms that come in the afternoon are fairly predictable. But if I'm going day hunting, like my personal loadout, if I'm just going to go day hunting or go turkey hunting that's relatively close to home, I don't bring the full Gore-Tex Pro Sitka gear with me, but I bring a light rain jacket because I know I'm just not that far out.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, in that 1 day span, I might have a pretty reasonable chance of success with a rain prediction. But if I'm backpacking in, if I'm going to go backpack in for 3 or 4 days, maybe that weather said, oh, it's going to be great. But within that 3 or 4 days, that can drastically change.
Yeah, for sure. What is there essential gear that when you're going in for more than a night that you recommend? You talked about a first aid kit and obviously some rain gear. What are we missing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm always trying to, I tweak my gear a lot, and I'm always really trying to strike that balance between, carrying too much stuff that's just a little bit ridiculous and yet not carrying enough. And I also want to be somewhat redundant. So if anytime I'm going overnight, I bring 2 headlamps, because I don't want to have to be, it's great. You got extra batteries. Well, you're not getting the big picture here. If your headlight's dead, good luck getting those batteries out and new ones in there. It's dark.
That's funny. So, I carry 2 headlamps even when I'm just out day hiking or out on a day hunt, just because I'm worried, like, man, if I sauce an elk at night and I have to spend the night, I'm gonna probably lose one of my headlamps, or the batteries are gonna die, or right. Whatever. It's just I just like having 2. Yeah.
So there's certain things that I'm willing to okay, maybe I'm not gonna bring this, and then there's other things like, no, this is like my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a gazillion. I mean, you can go on the Google machine and you can find a ton of like the 10 essentials and what all.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What all you need to bring. Hunting specific for me, I carry. I've dropped my pack where the goods are. Like that's where I have my possibles pouch. I have, my food, but I've dropped my pack and went out after something.
Mm-hmm.
So in my vinyl harness, I have, it isn't going to be pretty, but I got enough to survive. I've started messing with that pyro putty. I used to kind of make my own fire starter out of like sawdust and paraffin wax and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
And then I got my hands on some of that pyro putty, and I became a tremendous fan of that.
Does it burn long enough to get some kind of damp, almost wet kind of twigs going?
I haven't got to try it in really, really soaking wet conditions yet. I'm still fairly new with it. They sell different. They have 3 different kind of models you can buy, but I believe it's 4 different temperature ranges that you're out in. So they've got some that's for really, really cold that generally burns.
Oh, yeah. I just pulled up their website.
Yeah, they kind of tailor it, and they have small canisters of it. So I have a little can of that and a lighter in my vinyl harness with a small Petzl real small headlamp and a knife. And
that's perfect.
So when I'm even without my pack, I have enough. I have enough to at least I could get a fire going. Worst case scenario, I can't find my back because I've lost my backpack.
Yeah, I have too. I have too.
Yeah, that is no fun at all. So
you got me way into this pyro putty stuff, man. I'm looking at it. They have the ultra lightweight, the all natural, cold weather, and the warm weather stuff. And I feel like I'm the kind of guy that will probably have all 4 of them in my pack and maybe stick one in a bino cut. I love it. I'm glad you said that. I'm going to buy some.
Yeah, that stuff I've been kind of messing with that just because it's easier. The paraffin stuff that I was making before worked good, but it was a lot more bulky, and you had to pluck back so it would sort of come apart. And the cabinet making shop where I used to go pilfer my sawdust has gone out of business, so So
I geek out on that stuff, Mike. I like when even if I'm at the grocery store and there's some weird new, fire starter thing they got, some product, it never fails. I'll buy it. I don't care where I'm at. So I'm kind of
to see how it works. So this stuff, I've had some good luck with this stuff. So that's kind of, it's really, really, really comes down to your comfort level. What you're willing to tolerate. It's very season dependent. What you need to prepare for if you're hunting a late rifle season versus a worst case scenario in a late rifle season is far different than a worst case scenario in archery elk season.
Oh, sure, for sure.
So,
okay. So I want to go a little bit back to more the beginning of the conversation where you said, so I sit here and I kind of take notes. And so I apologize if we're kind of bouncing around here, but you mentioned something about reliance on technology. I'd love to hear your take on that. I think that's a big one.
It's funny because like a lot of the guys on search and rescue, I think they call me a relic when I'm not around, because there's so many, and and I will say they are phenomenal. Some of the stuff, like a lot of guys are really using Gaia, this app, a phone app that's a navigation app, and LandNav is kind of my jam. I think it's undervalued. I'm a map. I use a GPS. But I also the ability to transpose your location from what you see on your GPS and pick a point on a map and say I am right here is you can't put a value on it.
It's a lost art too, yeah.
It is, and no one, not just for safety, but in knowing when I'm hunting, knowing okay, I know how to get ahead of this. I know where I might be able to get ahead of this animal, or I know, based on the terrain, I know the best way for me to get through there. And what you can see on a snapshot on a GPS or even through Google Earth is it always looks harder when you're staring at it in real time than when you looked at it on a satellite image. Mm-hmm. So. But there's a reliance on phones, and I love Onyx. I don't have experience with Gaia, but the people I talked to, they said it's a fantastic app, great resolution. But I keep going back to it's on a phone. Like phone, I can drop my phone and it will not work. There's a chance that it might not work again.
Not to mention how easy is it to lose a phone? You think about it. I remember one time I set my phone down. I was taking a picture. This was back before you had Onyx. I set it down on a rock, packed up all my stuff, loaded up, walked a mile before I realized I'd left my phone sitting there, and had to walk all the way back. I think it's because of the Marines. I'm really good at land nav. I'm like you. I really like it. I need to brush up on a lot of it, but it's given me this kind of built-in sense of how to get back to certain places if I've been there. And so I was able to find my phone. How many people are going to go out, they've never been in the woods before and not know where they left their phone? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. They're so easy to lose, I guess is the point. They're just these little slim things that you can lose them and break them. And okay, back to you, Mike. I took it over.
You're exactly right. I mean, you can, and then when you find that you don't have your phone, you remembered when it was out of your pocket and you took a picture, but it could have fallen out of your pocket at some point in. I mean, there's a lot of the other issues is weatherproofing. How waterproof really is it? If you're out in a torrential downpour, if you have to cross a stream,
yeah.
If you're putting it in and out of a dry bag, I'm not going to do that. That to me is a waste of time. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to stuff the thing in a dry bag and then every time I need to reference it, go digging through my pack and trying to find it. I use an older model Garmin 62 CSX GPS. It works good. It's got okay mapping. The resolution in those is not. It's generally about double what you see on a map. So don't hang your hat on those topographical lines, being an accurate reference of when you're standing there, because generally they're a lot further apart on that device. But I basically use it for just a couple of things. Mark my backpack when I set it down, getting ready to go on a stalk, or my boots if I end up taking my boots off. I always, before I even get going, I mark where my car's parked and I mark where my camp is. On that thing, and then I really don't need to reference it all that much, unless I want to. But I know that if it gets dark and I can't really, I'm gone several ridges, at least I can bring up where my camp is, and navigate back to it.
Sure.
And my backup to that is, I recently got a watch that has a GPS in it, but before I had that, I had my watch was a Sunto and it had an altimeter, and I would just remember, okay, well, if I know what elevation my camp is on, and if I need to, I can, and I know what direction it's in the dark, I can just kind of traverse this elevation, and I'm bound to run it.
Yeah. That's brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, I heard it somewhere. I don't know where, but I've actually done it, and there's just a handful of things, and a lot of watches you can get that are, when it just has an altimeter, it's not chewing through your battery very much. I mean, I don't run around with my wristwatch, my GPS turned on. I do the same thing. I'll mark my camp. Basically, that's about all I worry about. I figure worst case, I can use my watch to get back to camp, and from there on, I'll be good.
Yeah.
But you got to keep that in mind. It's the same with the phone. You can't replace the batteries in a phone. I can't replace the batteries in my watch. So if I'm trying to run one of those navigation apps, it's going to chew through that stuff. Whereas my GPS is AA batteries, the same batteries that I can use in my headlamp. So it gives me the ability to keep that thing running. And I used to do a lot of canyoneering, and I dropped that thing down into off of the first rappel into Blue John Canyon, where years ago Aaron Ralston ended up having to cut his hand off to get out. He got stuck in there. I was doing that canyon, and on the first rappel, I dropped my spot. Of course, they were hooked together. They were both clipped in, and I bumped them when I was throwing my foot. And they both dropped down in there and both landed in water. And I'm like, well, that's not good. But I ended up rappelling down in there, pulled them both out of water. They were neither one. They weren't damaged at all. They were, I don't have a life-proof case because I actually need to use my phone and have access to the feet on it. But I guarantee if I chucked it down off, that was about a 45-foot, rappel into the rocks and water. It wouldn't have been very useful if I went down and got it.
It depends. It's all about time too. Like I use one of those OtterBox covers or whatever on my phone, and I've dropped it in the river while I'm fishing, but I grab it really fast and it's fine. Now if I dropped it and came back an hour later, it'd be screwed. Right. So it's water resistant is totally different than waterproof.
Yes.
And I totally agree with the technology is great. I love Onyx. I love my Onyx app and the technology surrounding that. I love having my phone to take pictures and mark my location. And I even sometimes, I don't know if I want people to know this or not, but I take random notes in my phone. Hey, I just got a bull respond. Here's the temperature. Here's what the cloud cover looks like. This is, just things like that, barometric stuff like that. So I can maybe see if after years of doing this, I could develop some kind of pattern as to what makes elk respond or something like that. Does that make sense? And so
Totally.
All of that is great. And I love the phone for that. But I 110% agree with you that relying on the technology as your only safeguard is a wild mistake. And understanding some basic land navigation and map reading and knowing how to use a compass, which, by the way, on that subject, using a compass or map reading, do you have any recommendations in terms of resources like YouTube channels or something that people could jump on and learn about that on their own without having to join the search and rescue or something?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. In fact, we mentioned Kafaru and Aaron Snyder. I think he's got some. He's seems to be really, really good, well accomplished, and I imagine it probably comes from his military background at Nav, and he's got some phenomenal YouTube content on it. And it's interesting as you get, we always use the UTM Grid, which is a grid system on the maps here. Because it essentially divides the world up into 1,000-meter squares, and then you get that grid, and the more numbers you have, the smaller you can make that grid down to a. I mean, I imagine if you extrapolate it out down to a 1-meter square,
sure.
But you can very easily with it's a clear plastic overlay on a map. You can take your Latin long on your GPS, and you can throw that overlay on a map and run those numbers and. Pinpoint very easily within 100 meters, but really without breaking too much of a sweat, you can get it even down to less than that as to exactly where you are on that map. And nothing gives you a bigger picture when you can actually step back and say, okay, this is where I'm standing and this is the direction that I'm facing. And now I can really see what's beyond, the ridge that I'm looking at or whatever the case may be.
Huh. So Snyder's got some, that dude's such an animal. Is he moving to Wyoming? Did I hear something about him moving to Wyoming?
Yeah, that's what I hear. They're going to be moving the shop up. I think the last I heard on his podcast, he was talking about late summer. They're getting a much larger facility, and I think they're going to.
Gotcha.
I think big picture, and again, I don't know. I don't speak. I don't call them up and chat. But I think big picture, they're talking about running some training out of there that's going to cover. They're going to do some land navigation clinics. They're going to do some bow tuning clinics.
Ah, that'd be awesome, Mike. Let's go to the land nav one, man.
I know, right? That'd be super
meet up.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Because he's getting inundated with probably people that are interested. I probably especially in bow tuning, because he's really good at it. And
yeah.
People don't know how to. I'm not that good at it either. So,
dude, I am disciplined enough to know that I'm not disciplined enough to touch my bow. I take it in.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna check that out. See if Aaron's posted something about that and talked about it. I actually haven't caught his podcast for a couple months now. Just because I haven't been driving much lately. So anyway, that's a whole other subject. But so Mike, I know we're running a little long here. I apologize. What is there anything we missed that you feel is pertinent or important for specifically backcountry hunters to know when they're going out in the backcountry to prevent the need for a search and rescue team coming out to try and find them?
I think prevention kind of comes with the planning of your hunt. Have the knowledge that you can look at a weather forecast, but if you're going to be out there for more than a couple days, realize that can definitely change. If you're just going out for a day hunt, that's going to be a lot more accurate than, for example, a base camp or some extended backpacking trip. Yeah. The advantages that are out now everybody has an inReach. Like those are so common, which is, man, that really speeds things up, because you just realize there's just not going to be cell service. I rarely have cell service when I'm out hunting. So having
never. Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, like as a youngster hunting. Do you remember the Buckskin Network?
Yeah.
They used to be on the radio.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day going,
I forgot about that.
So you have personal locator beacons and the ability to get out. The other thing is give people a time frame. If you have people on the outside, family or whatever, give them kind of an idea of where you're going and give them a time frame of when you should be out. And I don't want to say most importantly, but we've had this happen several times. If you tag out early, or for whatever reason you come out and you miss one of those checks, that's a huge problem for us, because we've been deployed. Our whole team's been out looking for somebody that was in a bar, or that was, they'd come out and they didn't check in and say they were coming out.
Oh,
and so
yeah. Scandalous sons of bitches. They're going to the bar and just didn't want their wife to know they were off the mountain or something, huh?
Right. So instead of shooting them a call, we're back at camp or everything's okay, they go dark, and people start to worry. So if you're if you're coming out for any reason, if you just need to go get food, or you have a mechanical, you need to go get a new string because you jacked up your bow or whatever, hey, just shoot that call out and let people know on the outside, just in case you can't make that check-in if you have a regular scheduled check-in or whatever the case may be. That stuff can really help out a search and rescue team from getting pulled, or if they're already on a mission, to be splitting off to come deal with that.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And I think one of the other big things that, it is so easy to get sucked into some of with YouTube and all this stuff, it looks so cool. It is so easy to get pulled into. I want to get into these high mountain basins and hunt mule deer or whatever. But I think you really need to be self-aware. And it's not that you're never going to get there. You just might need to work up to it. Pay attention to your fitness. Realize that, like we said earlier, when you see something on Onyx or Google Earth, when you're on the ground staring at that, it's going to look a lot different. It is going to, what you think, what looks like is super doable on a computer might be a whole nother ball game when you have to take altitude
I can't stress that point enough, Mike. It is always different. It's never just like, oh, yep, this is exactly how it looked on Onyx when I was sitting in my living room. It's never the same. Somebody was I was talking to somebody about what you were just saying with, and they had a really good way to put that. Like backcountry elk hunting, or going into the high country, or backcountry solo for a mule deer, kind of stuff. That's like kind of, like you said, it's not that it's not doable for somebody, but it is more of an expert level hunt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, your varsity level.
Your varsity level, and you don't take, and I'm not trying to be offensive at this, but you don't take a little league, a t-ball player and throw him into the big leagues, right? And it's not that far of a distance to get there, because you could become that. But if you're somebody who's never spent time in the mountains, and maybe the only kind of nature you've experienced is at the city park or something, don't go throwing yourself into a 10,000 foot elevation backcountry hunt by yourself. And think that everything's going to be okay, because there's a lot of nuances and little things that you need to learn as a mountaineer and as a woodsman to go in there. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that could be worth a podcast in itself as to how to get to that point, because it's not that big of a hurdle, but there is a hurdle. And I think that you nailed it earlier, Mike, when you talked about the lack of experience somewhere like the Colorado high country, or and that's gonna translate to the deserts of Arizona, or the high country here in Idaho, or the what we call the jungles up here in North Idaho. It's all different terrain. Like for me, I'll tell you this, as just for folks listening to think, I don't want you to think that I wouldn't be humbled. I personally would not go into the backcountry of the deserts down in Arizona or New Mexico by myself. I would want somebody who has done that. And I grew up in the desert, and so it's just not something I have a lot of experience in terms of backcountry hunting. And so for me, I'm a guy who's got a lot of experience hunting. I wouldn't do that without somebody that knows the landscape a little bit better and kind of show me the ropes, and vice versa. I think I have friends down in those areas that wouldn't want to come up here and go into the backcountry without me. And it's just common sense. Do you have anything to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think it's mentorship is probably undervalued, and I don't know how easy. I mean, I think woodsmanship. I had to learn how to hunt on my own, but the being out in the woods wasn't the problem. It was trying to figure out how to find elk. That was the problem.
I still struggle with that.
Right, but it's if you can get into, it seems like there's not many classes. I mean, if there was, I don't know. I don't know if there's any kind of, but anymore there's so much stuff on YouTube, and I think it's very, very much like we touched on earlier. Go car camp. Go do get a buddy and go do a single overnight, camp. And you can build the experience on that without having to use your hunting season time to do it. But you really have to have that self-awareness and understand that, man, if it takes all the gas in your tank to get back to where the hunting starts, that's where the work starts. And if one little thing like, well, there was supposed to be water here, that is a game ender.
Yep.
You have the ability. Do you know how to where are you going to go? What's the plan now? If you've used 100% of your capability just to get to that point, and then even if you're in, the idea is to be successful. How are you going to get an animal out? What's that going to look like?
Yeah. Good point.
So, it's just really looking at the overall picture, and you look at these guys that are killing it. You look at these guys that are just, man, straight up killers in the backcountry. They hike in so far and are always successful. It's not easy for them either. You really dig into it, and you look at how some of these guys have gotten sick back there, gotten altitude sickness. There's a dozen different things that can happen, but by and large, you're going to just see you kind of see what you want to see, and you see the YouTube shot, and they might mention that stuff, but the focus is the beauty of the country and knocking down a trophy mule deer or elk, and then it's magically out in the coolers of the truck.
They don't talk about the stepping on a ground nest of a bunch of yellow jackets and the repercussions of that in the backcountry and the trouble that can get you into.
Right. And you people here, kind of where I live, there's a whole nother. We've had missions because of stock where somebody get chucked off a horse.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's something to pay attention to. Like you can get creamed.
You can get paralyzed off a horse.
Just riding into your camp. So
yeah. Well,
it just has awareness to know what you're getting into, I think.
This is all great stuff. Mike, you're a wealth of information, man. I feel like we can keep this going for a long time, and maybe we ought to do it again, just because I feel like we just kind of touched the foundational stuff, and maybe there's some deeper level stuff we can get into. So if you're up for it, maybe doing this again.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you've just got the experience. You've got a lifetime living in the rugged Colorado, rifle Colorado area. It's not easy. It's not easy stuff over there. And it's a great place to be, other than the new danger in Newcastle up the road from you named Guy driving a silver Dodge Ram, nothing but trouble. It's just a good conversation. I think this is the kind of stuff that can help people. Maybe it'll save somebody. Maybe it'll make somebody more prepared when they go out, and they'll think of some of the things that you talked about, and be prepared for those kind of situations. So, and again, I apologize that we had to record while I'm, kind of laid up with this cold here. I feel like it what's funny? It makes my mind not work right or something. Like my train of thought gets lost easy. Does that make sense? I don't know what the deal is with this cold, but I just feel dumber than I mean, I'm dumb anyway, but I feel dumber with the cold. So.
Yeah, that.
Whoop, did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Well, Mike, thanks again. I appreciate you doing this, and I hope that you keep in touch with the British Columbia hunt coming up, the bear hunt and the turkey hunt, and obviously we're going to stay in touch for September, and let's jump on another podcast again and go into some deeper stuff. And Mike Kuper from Rifle Colorado, the Rifle Police Department, and let's see if I can get this, Garfield County Search and Rescue. Is that right?
That's right.
Right on, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.